and welcome to this week's edition of World Today. The month of December is crucial for India as it began its G20 presidency on the 1st of the month and also holds the presidency of the United Nations Security Council for this very month. Now the question is, should multilateral events be stymied by bilateral irritants? Here we speak of tensions with Pakistan and China. At a signature event of India in the Security Council, the Indian and Pakistani foreign ministers sparred. There's also the question of India's G20 presidency being overshadowed by recent border clashes between troops of India and China. Let's begin with a report from New York on Jaishankar-Bilawal Bhutto verbal duel.
Two signature events of India after it assumed presidency of the United Nations Security Council for the month of December on counter-terrorism and reformed multilateralism. Jaishankar presided over the open debate where Pakistan's Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto was present as the current chair at the G77 grouping. And as always, Pakistan did not spare a moment to rake up the issue of Kashmir.
If we want to see the success of multilateral institutions, the success of multilateralism, the success of this very council, then surely you can aid in this process and allow for the implementation of UN Security Council resolutions when it comes to the question of Kashmir. Prove that multilateralism can succeed.
I shall now make a statement in my capacity.
India strongly hit back at Pakistan, asserting that a country that hosted slain Al-Qaeda terrorist Osama bin Laden and attacked a neighboring parliament does not have the credentials to sermonize in UN.
While we search for the best solutions, what our discourse must never accept is the normalization of such threats. The question of justifying what the world regards as unacceptable should not even arise. That certainly applies to state sponsorship of cross-border terrorism. Nor can hosting Osama bin Laden and attacking a neighboring parliament serve as credentials to sermonize before this council.
India-Pakistan bilateral rift has been on the forefront at international fora, and this is not new. India's standing at the Council was evident by the support it received from countries like the UK, UAE and France for its bid at permanent membership of the UNSC.
Your voice in this chamber is necessary, and the United Arab Emirates reiterates its endorsement of India's bid for permanent membership of a reformed Security Council.
Multilateral solutions
But Pakistan's foreign minister questioned India's credentials since it does not accept or subscribe to the UN resolutions on Kashmir.
Parties to a dispute cannot advocate multilateral processes one day and insist on bilateral avenues the next. Pakistan firmly believes that the major security problems, including those in our region, Madam President, can be effectively and peacefully resolved through the active involvement of the Security Council and the Secretary General.
We have convened here today.
India maintains that Kashmir is a bilateral issue and has to be resolved between the two nations. However, Jaishankar's response was focused on furthering multilateralism and not let the discussion stray into a bilateral war of words between India and Pakistan.
We are obviously focused today on the urgency of reforming multilateralism. We will naturally have our particular views, but there is an ongoing convergence at least that this cannot be delayed any further.
18 years ago, on December 13th, terrorists of the Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Toiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed attacked the Parliament complex in New Delhi and opened fire, killing 9 people.
All of us are aware.
Minister Jaishankar's strong remarks are a reminder for Pakistan that while advocating multilateralism, countries should refrain from pursuing narrow national ambitions and firstly face collectively the existential threats faced by human race in the shape of COVID pandemic, climate change, the nuclear threat and terrorism.
The India-China border clashes in Arunachal Pradesh has heightened tensions between the two nations at a time when India has assumed presidency of the G20 and is planning around 200 meetings in over 50 cities of India leading up to the big summit which would be held in September 2023. Now, China's participation at these events is going to be critical, and therefore India's response to the recent Chinese aggression, while stern, is also carefully worded so it does not have a ripple effect on India's G20 presidency. Many experts believe that bilateral tensions might not act as an impediment to India's plans, since China is also trying to engage the global south or the developing world, as is India, while others believe that New Delhi might have to tread carefully. India played a rather constructive and important role in bridging differences and bringing about consensus on the Bali Declaration during the G20 summit held this year in Indonesia. Today, the world order is more polarized than ever before, and multilateral fora are being dragged into bilateral conflagrations. But this could also be an opportunity for India to highlight the very nature of aggression that it has been facing for decades. Meanwhile, there have been reactions to the border tensions from across the globe.
India has inherited a very difficult challenge with its presidency of the G20 over the next year. It's going to be managing a very powerful economic bloc that is riven by member states locked in strategic rivalry and in deep tensions, right? You look at the U.S. and Russia, the U.S. and China, China and Japan, you name it. You've got a tense group right there. But now that tensions between India and China appear to be picking up with this latest border clash, that means that India itself has been dragged into the tensions and the rivalries within the G20, and it certainly is going to make its role as G20 president all the more difficult. But I would argue that given that India has been so adept for so many years at managing difficult relationships and pursuing multilateral efforts, I would think that this is a challenge that India will gladly embrace and that it will relish tackling. And I assume that it'll still be in a position where it can lead it and overcome and transcend these pretty serious rivalries and tensions within this powerful bloc.
We're open to creative ideas and to credible, sensible, and politically viable paths forward. This is a listening tour to hear ideas from all members, as it is critical that everyone sees himself in the process. I'm looking forward to continuing these engagements, including through the intergovernmental negotiation process.
On Spotlight this weekend, we have Amitabh Kant, who is the Sherpa of the G20, as India now has assumed presidency. He speaks to us on how challenging it is going to be for India to host the G20 summit and what could be the impediments. Listen in.
For me as a Mumbaiker also, what are the agendas which we are putting forward and how they are important for us?
The important thing is that this meeting of the Development Working Group, and the Development Working Group is focusing on some key issues, but India's priorities are very critical. They are about what Prime Minister said, that India's G20 presidency will be very inclusive, will be action oriented, will be very, very decisive, and therefore our agenda is about digital transformation of the world, because that will lift people above the poverty line. It is about women-led development. It is about bringing in, accelerating the pace of sustainable development goals. It is about inclusive, resilient and sustainable growth, and it is about life, that is lifestyle for environment and climate financing, and it is about building up multilateral institutions of the 21st century. So all these are very critical issues for the world, and we will be discussing many of these issues.
Out of these two, sir, digital payments and startups, are they the strength and that's the narrative we are building for G20?
Yes. So India has done path-breaking work in digital transformation. We've done some unique things like digital identity, the JAM Trinity, digital fast payments, which are 7x of what USA, Europe, Canada, France do, 3x of what China does. And therefore it's a unique model for the rest of the world. We've been able to build digital identities. We've been able to empower the citizens with their data. We've been able to build up very fast payments and open bank accounts for a vast segment of our population. Therefore, we were able to do direct benefit transfers. All the government schemes go through DBTs, and this is a story which needs to be told to the world. This holds many lessons for the world, because as the Bank of International Settlement has said, India achieved in less than a decade what it would have taken it 50 years to achieve.
Will you also overcoming the challenges of logistics? Because as you said, this is an unprecedented event. There will be 200 plus meetings, 50 plus cities. How do we plan to manage that?
So 215 events in 56 cities of India. That is the challenge, and we will do our best. We will try and use this opportunity to improve city infrastructure, as Mumbai has done. Huge transformation of Mumbai in a very short period. Path-breaking work by the Maharashtra government and by the Municipal Commissioner Corporation of Mumbai. We will use this opportunity to showcase culture. We'll use this opportunity to showcase art, crafts, handicrafts, and the local cuisine of Maharashtra.
So just to know for knowledge, how the budgets work for this? Is the hosting country who does it?
So that accommodation, flights are all done by international agencies. We only host them as far as dinners, etc. are concerned. The local hosting, but the international guests all spend their own money.
Okay. Is there a corpus, sir? Or
so there is a certain allocation made by the government, but state governments participate in this exercise. States also join hands with us. It's a cooperative partnership between the center and the state.
Given the geopolitical situation, you think how do we can deal with Russia, a country which is amidst war, and bring them on table and discuss sustainable development goals with them?
So G20 is about economic growth, it's about progress, it's about financial. This forum does not get into issues of war. That's an issue which Ministry of External Affairs will discuss.
Even with China, do you think it will be an issue with the Tawang episode?
No. As far as G20 members are concerned, we were able to bring them to the table and discuss and find a final solution at Bali, and we are very hopeful and confident that we will work towards an agreement. Thank you.
The Russia-Ukraine war is about to mark 1 year in February, but the conflict on ground does not seem to end. This week, Russian drone strikes damaged buildings in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. The strike left a gaping hole in the roof of a 3-storied administrative building in the central district, and the blast blew out windows in parked cars and in a neighboring building. Cleanup crews were on site quickly to shovel away the rubble and roll out plastic sheets to cope with freezing temperatures in the snow-covered capital. Recent attacks show that Ukrainian capital remains vulnerable to the Russian attacks, devastating country's infrastructure furthermore. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky claimed 13 Iranian-made drones were fired at them.
This morning, the terrorists started with 13 Shahed. Previously, all 13 were shot down by Ukrainian air defense systems. Well done. I'm proud. Dear citizens, we thank the air defense and do not forget about the sirens.
Now moving to another continent altogether. Political instability in Peru has left the citizens dejected and anguished. Protesters have hit the streets, set public property on fire, and continue to protest, demanding the release of former President Pedro Castillo, who tried to dissolve the Congress in an attempt to defend himself against impeachment proceedings followed by corruption allegations. Now, in recent developments, the newly appointed president has declared a 30-day-long state emergency in the country to tackle protests. Take a look.
A political turmoil is setting the streets of Peru on fire. With at least 8 dead and 5 of them being teenagers during clashes with police in the first week of protest, Peru's new government has declared a 30-day national state of emergency to quell violent demonstrations. Hundreds of people in Lima are out protesting to bring back previous government led by Pedro Castillo. Castillo is facing 6 federal investigations, most for alleged corruption, which he has denied. A few days back, Peru's Congress voted for the removal of former President Pedro Castillo shortly after Castillo tried to dissolve the legislature ahead of the scheduled vote to remove him.
Si no hay oposición por parte de ningún congresista,
if there is no opposition from any representative, it will be approved. It has been approved. Representatives, I will continue. I need to continue.
Señores congresistas, voy a continuar.
Soon after he was ousted, Vice President Dina Boluarte took the oath of office and became the first female leader in more than 200 years history of the independent republic.
Asumo el cargo de Presidenta Constitucional de la República.
I assume the position of Constitutional President of the Republic, being conscious of the enormous responsibility that I have. My first request, which have been no other, is to call for the broadcast unity from all Peruvians.
De todas y todos los peruanos.
But the chaos on the street continues. Some are protesting in support of Castillo, while others want a total reset of the country with fresh general elections and a dissolution of Congress.
I'm seeing this, and everything that is happening in Peru is happening hastily. That's why with the departure of Pedro Castillo, if the right believes that the crisis has been solved, it is extremely wrong. It has only worsened and entered into another worst chapter.
Earlier this week, citizens in Peruvian capital gathered outside the Legislative Palace, prompting police to use tear gas to quell the protest.
We are not communists or anything. We are the organized people who want a nation free of corruption, which allows us to get out of this underdevelopment, of this colonialism that we continue to live in.
The protest so far has taken lives of a few people, mostly teenagers. All of them died due to gunshot wounds. Peru has seen a strong growth economically, making it a star of Latin America in the 21st century. But the political turmoil is increasingly threatening to derail its economic stability. Voters are fed up with the constant political infighting, as Peru has seen 6 presidents in the last 5 years and 7 impeachment attempts. The only way many Peruvians feel they can make their voices heard is in the street, and they are continuing to do so through blocked roads, setting fires and even taking over airports. With Simranjit Kaur Renu, Bureau Report, India Today.
And here are some other stories from across the world in World at a Glance.
10 people, including 5 children, died in a fire in an apartment building near Lyon, France. The blocks of flat where the fire broke out is part of a housing project in the Lyon suburbs. The flames appear to have started on the ground floor before spreading upwards. Local media reported that witnesses had seen residents jumping from the windows in an attempt to save their lives. Just a few days after China relaxed some of its stringent zero-COVID policy measures, the country is now facing a surge in infections. It's holiday season in China, leading people to plan outings and travels have increased post the relaxed travel curbs. The authorities are now concerned that China is unprepared for the wave of infections to come. Iran was voted off a UN women's body this week due to its ongoing crackdown against peaceful protests and its repressive and discriminatory policies towards women and girls. In a vote of 29 to 8, with 16 abstentions, the 54-member Economic and Social Council took the unprecedented step of immediately removing Iran for the remainder of its term on the Commission on the Status of Women, which expires in 2026. The Commission meets for 2 weeks every March to discuss issues of women's empowerment and achieving gender equality. Qatar FIFA World Cup has now approached its finals, and 2 teams reaching the final face-off are Argentina and France. Earlier this week, Argentina beat Croatia by 3-0 in the first semi-finals. And then in the second semi-finals, France beat the first African country ever to make it this far in the tournament, Morocco, by 2-0, becoming the finalists for the FIFA World Cup 2022.
Soon the world will have a winner from Qatar FIFA Football World Cup. But before we leave and end this edition, let's take a look at the stars this season. They shone bright not just for themselves, but also for Palestine. Yes, we are talking about Morocco. Despite being unable to qualify for the finals, Morocco have been remarkable this FIFA World Cup. And it is only in Qatar that an African Arab nation could pull out the red, green, white and black colors of the Palestinian flag. It became a common sight in the streets of Doha or at stadiums courtesy the Moroccan football team. Soccer fans from across the world showed solidarity by wearing the tiny state's national flag as a mantle on top of their team's jerseys. Take a look. Goodbye and take care.